We turn our attention now to China as Washington's largest rival and how it has reacted to election results from the United States. Olivia Siong joins us live from Beijing. Olivia, any official reactions so far?
Wei-Su, still no official reaction from China just yet. We'll be keeping a close eye on that. But earlier today, I attended the daily briefing by China's foreign ministry. Now, that was before the results were conclusive and before Mr. Trump took the stage to declare victory in this election. And when asked what China's foreign ministry thought of Mr. Trump gaining ground, the spokesperson emphasized that the U.S. presidential election is an internal affair of the U.S. and that China respects the American people's choice. Now, that has been the official line that China has used when talking about the U.S. election. But what was also indicative was the spokesperson's reply to the question on whether this would affect China-U.S. relations and China's policy. Here's what she had to say.
我们对美国的政策是一以贯之的，我们将继续按照相互尊重、和平共处、合作共赢的原则看待和处理中美关系。
Now, as we await the official reaction, however, we have seen Chinese media, for example, China Daily put out an editorial in which it said that this is an opportunity for China-U.S. relations to have a new beginning if the chance that has been offered is not wasted to manage the two countries' differences. Wei-Su.
Olivia, any chance to reset these ties? We've seen the same issues that plagued those relations in the first Trump administration. They have certainly not gone away. Mr. Trump has already telegraphed how he's going to be reacting to China. What were these issues? How are they likely to worsen relations, possibly in the second administration?
Well, the big factor here and what analysts have been saying is going to be the challenge is uncertainty with Mr. Trump back in the White House, whether it's on the American alliances and their approach to China in the South China Sea or with regard to the self-ruled island of Taiwan. Although China continues to hold the view that America, there is bipartisan consensus that views American actions as trying to contain its rise. But perhaps the top issue on people's minds is trade. During his first term, Mr. Trump called himself the tariff man. And on the campaign trail, he has talked about tariffs on imported goods with additional tariffs of about 60% on Chinese goods that he is intending to put in place. Of course, that's campaign talk. Whether they will actually come into fruition remains to be seen. But when asked how China would handle more potential tariffs, the Chinese Foreign Ministry said it does not answer hypothetical questions. But ING Bank did say in a note that this could be just the start of negotiations between two sides. But in the long run, we have already seen China hedging against what it views as an increasingly competitive relationship with the U.S. So we hear increasing talk about a need for self-reliance and for innovation, especially in advanced technologies, whether it's solar panels or electric vehicles. Although some analysts say while this technology war is likely to deepen, Mr. Trump could be a more pragmatic negotiator when it comes to China. Even though he's talked about higher tariffs, he's also spoken about building the manufacturing industry in the U.S. and that he welcomed China to build cars in America, which is a shift from the Biden administration's tariffs and restrictions on Chinese EVs. But perhaps what has got the region rattled is the uncertainty. My colleague Deborah Wong spoke to a technology analyst in Hong Kong at a watch party organized by the American Chamber of Commerce. Here's what he had to say. Well, in that point, he did say that what is needed is clarity and stability in the war. And one of the things to point out is that even as the election is taking place, a big meeting of China's top legislature is also happening and underway as we await news on whether more stimulus measures could be announced. Some analysts saying that possibly with Mr. Trump's victory, a larger stimulus package could be announced, although some analysts also have a contrary view that this could be announced down the road. We shall have to wait and see, and much more to talk about in the days and years ahead.
Olivia, whatever happens in one economy now, very likely to dictate any policy decisions that Beijing might produce at this very important meeting. CNA's Olivia Siong reporting there from Beijing. And for a perspective on the impact of that election, right here closer in Southeast Asia, Leong joins us in the studio. Waikit, we just heard Olivia there talking about increasing competition in the tech sector. There's also competition in getting a voice or an influence in countries right here in the region. And we've seen that in the most prominent conflicts during Biden's years, the last 4 years, in terms of influence in Southeast Asia.
Right. So if we look at ASEAN, what's important to ASEAN, two key crises, one of which is, of course, the Myanmar crisis. The other will be tensions on the South China Sea. So if we look back very quickly on what Biden has done for Myanmar, I must quickly say that Myanmar is very low on the Washington's priority list for foreign policy. And it's under that backdrop, as well as the context of the Myanmar coup, that one might argue that under Biden, US had done what it could on Myanmar. For instance, less than 2 weeks into the coup, US slapped sanctions on Myanmar. And since then, sanctions have been a regular feature, actions against Myanmar. It has slapped sanctions on banks, on junta, on junta families, as well as conglomerates. The second notable thing under the US is that it is the first country to officially recognize and engage with Myanmar's opposition, the National Unity Government. And I'm talking about a time when NUG's engagements with countries were intentionally kept under wraps. Of course, on a diplomatic level, the US had downgraded ties with Myanmar. There's no ambassador, there's a charge d'affaires. But having done all that, Myanmar is still business as usual, but you must not disagree that Washington has done whatever it could on the Myanmar issue. On South China Sea, Biden's administration had been very consistent and very vocal on rhetorics warning against dangerous, coercive actions on the South China Sea, defending, or rather vowing to defend Manila if it's attacked in disputed waters. And on an actionable level, the US has held military drills with allies, including with the Philippines, on the South China Sea. Of course, Philippines is one of the claimant states on the South China Sea.
All right, Waikit, very quickly, and this question, if you knew the answer, you probably wouldn't be working here. Where do you think Mr. Trump will be on these two hot-button issues, Myanmar and South China Sea?
Right, let's start with Myanmar. I think under a Trump administration, Myanmar is going to disappear even further from Washington's priorities. And in that context, China will come in to fill in that vacuum. I've spoken at length about how China is influential now when it comes to the Myanmar crisis. So in that lens, when it comes to US-China rivalry, China 1, Washington 0 in that context. For South China Sea, we've heard our colleague Olivia Siong say the word twice, uncertainty. And indeed, we don't have any clear policy on what Trump will roll out on the South China Sea. What is certain is that there will be increased counterbalance. In fact, they might be seen in the trade front rather than on the maritime state. But with Trump, again, unpredictable, we never know. And this is where ASEAN comes in. It is in ASEAN's interest to keep all these flashpoints in the region, which is why it's been pushing for a code of conduct. Yes, it's a very slow negotiation, but it has other tools. For example, getting the coast guards in ASEAN and China to come together, or using agreements such as QUES, short for Code for Unplanned Encounters at Sea. And so it is in ASEAN's interest to keep these disputes within the region, because the more crowded a South China Sea, there will be a risk of miscalculation, something that ASEAN fears deeply.
All right, all of us looking to the crystal ball here. Thanks so much. Leong Waikit speaking at where Mr. Trump might be on these top topics in Southeast Asia.